medical field, like doctors and physicians and researchers and so forth. If you want to research weight training, where are you going to get any money to research it? Is anybody going to give you any money to go do it?
You probably have to do it through like athletic companies or sports drink or food companies at this point, right?
But what's the problem with that?
Then they have an invested interest, and that can make things biased.
That's exactly right. And so anything you read about strength training, read it with caution. Even some of the big dogs in the field are funded by supplement companies. And their supplement always turns out good. I'd never have figured out why or how, but these are people that are supposed to be big researchers and stuff, so be careful there with who you read and what you see. If you don't learn anything else in this class, be a skeptic. Don't believe it unless there's evidence to back it up, right? And it needs to make sense to you, too. And so if something happens in the body, there's got to be a reason for it to happen. Something's got to be making it work. Like you eat fat or protein or whatever, and it does whatever, something's got to make it work. It just doesn't happen, okay? And so it just doesn't occur through magic there, okay? And so any program you get on will make you stronger, probably. Anything you do. If you increase the resistance or whatever, you're going to overload the body, and the body's going to adapt to the stress that you place on it. They all tend to work a little bit. Beware of these muscle-bound guys that are gym rats that hang around the gym, and they like to give everybody advice on this is the right way, and they'll take a good machine and they'll rig it to do something it's not ever designed to do, or they'll come up to a pretty girl, hey, let me help you with this, and all kinds of stuff there. Be wary of gym rats or whatever. When I go in the gym, I work out. If we're all working out together next to each other, hey, how you doing? I go work out. I don't bother you. You don't bother me. We just go get our workout in and get out of there. Okay? I've had people come up, hey, you need to be doing this. Okay, thank you. And so move on. Leave me alone. I came here to work out. I didn't come here to socialize with you. And so, and that happens all the time, right? And so, they get wearing them. I'm a member of gym in Orange Beach, Alabama, and they got some pretty muscle people down there. And so the beach attracts a lot of muscle folks. They spend all the time looking at their arms. What are you looking at, man? You got like a rash under there? Or what's happening there? Huh? And so base everything on what? Good information, right? Good science. And and unfortunately, a lot of coaches don't really have good backgrounds in exercise science. Okay, and so if you look at somebody like Alabama, Coach Saban, was he a good athlete? He's my size. We're almost the exact same size. Was he a great football player?
Probably not.
No. Where did he go? He went to a little school up, he's from West Virginia, went to a little Mickey school or something up there, but he wasn't a good player. But they don't hire him for his playing ability, they hire him for what?
His coaching ability.
Yeah, his brain, right? Okay, and so if we look at their program, and so here's Saban. Here's his program. He has got a nutritionist, right?
Yep.
Because Saban doesn't know a lot about nutrition, probably, right? Nutrition person, right? He's got somebody that does hydration every day, a nurse. She does hydration. In practice, they have 2 or 3 full-time doctors. They have 6 or 7 doctors that deal with them. They've got, I don't know how many, they've got 2 big dog strength and conditioning coaches, and they probably have about 10 grad assistants to help with that. What else do they have? Nutritionist, they probably have some most of them are scientists. Okay, and they're scientists. One of my friends, well, one of my ex-students, I have a few superstar students, and that have done really, really good in the world. And Mike Esco, he was here from Wetumpka. He taught here for years. Y'all know him, Dr. Esco? And so y'all missed out on him. But he went to the University of Alabama, and for the strength conditioning coaches, they have to pass a certification test to be an NCAA strength conditioning coach. They changed that a little bit, but they have to pass the CSCS exam. Now, Cochran, who's their old school strength conditioning coach, had never passed the test. And so Dr. Esco had to tutor Cochran to pass the test. Okay. And because he'd never done it. He was old school. He learned on the job training and stuff like that. He didn't know about energy systems and all that kind of stuff that you learn in class. And so then they started to have a lot of injuries and problems, and Cochran was really good in his day, but they come in, and this year they hire an exercise scientist, and they hire another strength conditioning coach who's more modern, is more up on the science there in terms of exercise science. And so now I think it's improved their program in terms of strength conditioning. And so it's a lot of it's through exercise science, working with other people, working with coaches, and getting them up to date on the best and greatest ways to train and condition people, right? So you need what? Support, right? In order to perform and do the best that you can, whatever you're trying to do. It's nice if you have all these coaches, all these people, all this knowledge, all this stuff that you can use to train. So why are we setting world records nowadays? We're smarter, right? We're training, we're bigger, stronger, faster, smarter, better athletes, better coaches, so forth. And they do a lot with analytics. The stat part, they have stats on everything in the world. So they put sensors on their uniforms. They know how far they've gone. They know every step they take. Like in a practice, a lot of the wide receivers and stuff end up running about a 10K in practice in terms of a little here, a little here, a little here. It all adds up to a total volume of training. All that came from soccer in terms of the sensors and stuff they put on them, and the soccer players, and they measure every step they take. They can measure force, acceleration, speed, everything. Okay, and so it's all tracked in terms of performance there. So that's why it's important for you to learn a little bit about what? Exercise science, right? And so because it can help with whatever you're going to do in this field. You can work in this field. You may not want to work in this field, but if you do, you need to keep up. So I was sort of like Macbeth. I had 2 degrees I went to Auburn, and then I decided I really wanted to get in exercise science because I couldn't stand any other subjects I took. And so I got into that, and so then I'd go and hang out with the people, stay in the library all day, reading exercise science books and that kind of stuff. So then I worked with an exercise physiologist there. I got my master's there, and then worked with some others, and then I went to UAB and worked with some others, and I went to Alabama and worked with some others. So I worked under like 5 or 6 exercise physiologists. Okay, and so we have 3 here. You got me, you got Dr. Russell, and you got Dr. Davis. Okay, they're rookies. I'm the oldest one. So Dr. Russell was my student. She never graduated from high school. She quit high school. She got bored. She got bored and quit high school. She got her GED, I guess. And then she had her master's at the time she was 20. And so And then she went to University of Alabama. They give one fellowship which pays for everything in the whole University of Alabama. She got that fellowship. Okay. And so then we hired her back here after she got her doctoral degree. But yeah, she's a student just like you in his class there. And then Dr. Davis, he's from Tennessee, North Alabama, that area. And so he teaches y'all some classes too. So you got 3 people that you can learn from in terms of exercise science here. So that's good. If you were taking this class at the University of Alabama, you'd have a graduate assistant up here that may not know anything about exercise science teaching the class. Okay. And so he might have read the book. And so you may have 400 people in the class. So it's a little different there. Any of you know anything about Faulkner? None of you? Any connections? Okay, I got an assignment for you. They're supposed to be putting in a new PT program there. I know Skylar's applied for their physician assistant program. They're putting the new physician assistant program there. I think they're putting in an athletic training program there.
And supposedly an OT program.
An OT. Okay. So I want you to
Thank you.
let the class give a report. Just get some information in terms of, hey, you're interested in some programs, and contact Faulkner and see what they say in terms of what programs they're putting in and when they'll be available and what the process is. Because that might be an opportunity for some of you to, if you want to go to PT school and stay in Montgomery, you know, you got Alabama State, but that gives you another option. One of my friends, Cindy Laporte, I know she left Alabama State. She's at Faulkner now. I think she's putting in the PT and OT program. I'm not sure. I need to contact her. And so she's got a master's or doctorate in biomechanics, and she's got a PhD too. She's a PT, so she's really a smart girl. She lives in Tallahassee, so really good person. So that's another opportunity for you to check out. My grandson, who works at RTJ, where he used to work, they need some part-time workers. So if any of you interested in doing part-time work, go out to Robert Trent Jones in Prattville and fill out an application. And so it's, I guess most of the work, you don't play golf at night, so it's got to be in the day sometimes. So anybody interested in part-time work, I told him I'd make that announcement there. So if anybody's interested. Now, I don't know how to work with your schedules, so but you can fill out an application. They need some people to help there. Okay, let's get into strength. So what is strength? How do we measure strength? It is the maximal amount of force that you can exert for what? 1 rep. 1 repetition. Maximum amount of force that you can exert for 1 repetition. And so, you know, that's easy to measure, right? And so it should be pretty easy to measure. And we can measure isometric strength, isotonic strength, isokinetic strength, and so dynamic strength. And so we can measure strength in all different kinds of ways. Those of you that want to go to PT school need to know how to measure muscle strength. I had a problem with this ankle and running, and I went to the PTs, I went to the doctors, none of them helped me with it or never could solve my problem. And then one day I was looking on the machines, I measured strength in one foot versus the other foot, and I said, man, this foot is only about 50% to this foot, right, or ankle. So then I got this foot strong again and got them both the same strength, and then they cured me. And so, but I went to the PTs, I went to the orthopedist, and they never measured my strength. They just look at it, and X-ray it, and feel it, or whatever, but never measure strength. Okay, and so if you get an injury or whatever, it's good to measure what? Strength, right? And compare it to the good versus the bad or whatever there. So strength is the maximum amount of force you can exert for one repetition. And isometric. This is just a quick review. Should know all this anyway. Isometric means what? ISO means what? ISO means same, right? Metric refers to what? A measurement of length, right? Measurement. So same length, same measurement. So everybody take your hands together. We're going to do isometric. Ready, set, go, push. You don't grunt, you're not pushing hard enough. Okay, so that's isometric. Let's do another one. Let's do the neck. Put your hand on the side of your head, push. Okay. Isometric, right? Put your hand out here, do your bicep. Isometric. You get a whole workout in class. I used to do that sometimes. I'd get bored, I'd take my knees and push them together hard as I could. I'd push it. Push here. Hold my stomach again. Tighten it hard as I could tighten it. Sit back, and so forth. Okay. As long as you're quiet, nobody really cares, right? On an airplane, you can do it. And so, some research came out of Germany in the 50s and said, hey, this is the best way to increase your strength level. And they did a little study. You ever heard of Charles Atlas? If you ever seen pictures of him, he's holding up the globe of the world. And so Charles Atlas used to have a little program he sold. And it's based upon, he said, how come the tigers and stuff in the zoo, they can't really exercise? How come they're so strong? And so they watched the tigers and he watched them go, and they walk to the end of the cage and then they stretch. And then they go back to the other end and they do isometric stuff. So the animals were doing isometrics, they claim. And so then he came up with his program of strength, okay? And so then the research came out and everybody said, hey, isometrics is the way to go. And back in the 60s, I was at Marion Junior College and I was attempting to play football. And so nobody lifted weights. The coaches said it makes you muscle bound, you get stiff and tight, it decreases your performance. College players didn't even lift weights. Nobody lifted weights, okay? Baseball players, they said that's the worst thing you could possibly do. Makes you tight. And so then we had in front of the gym at Marion, wasn't much. We had these bars like this, and we had another one of these bars like this, and we go out and we take the bar, and one exercise would be taking it, do like a curl hard as we could push. Then we have another bar, push hard as we could push. And so we did a whole exercise routine isometrically, pushing against an object that wouldn't move. Okay, and we might have gotten stronger, but the problem is we only got stronger in one position, one angle. Because that only increases your strength at the position or angle that you do the force at. So if you're doing a bench press and you got that one little stick in place, you do isometrics, and that helps you do what? Get through that little weak spot right there. So isometrics is okay, and it has a purpose, but it really increases your blood pressure and makes you strain and stuff. And so it'll make you stronger, but there's not many sports or games that you play where you just stand in one spot and push, okay? And so now the researcher says, okay, it has its place, but it's not that good. Then we measured isometric strength. We had something called a cable tensiometer. You know what that is? Okay, back in the day, they had airplanes. Let's say here's an airplane here, it had a wing here, they have cables that held these wings in place. And so when they put the airplane together, they had to measure the tension in these cables. And so they had this cable tensiometer they clipped the tensiometer onto the cable, and it looked at how much pressure was on that particular wing right there. And then we had them to measure strength. We'd have a cable, and we'd have a thing, and we'd pull against the cable, and we could see how much force was on the cable, and then we would measure our strength. Okay, we don't use those anymore. But we could measure strength with a cable tensiometer there. Now we've got like the hand grip dynamometer, which is the same thing. You take it, and y'all have probably done this in exercise phys lab, right? You take it and grip it as hard as you can, and then it gives you a little, this is your force, right? And so that's another measure of isometric strength, right? And they claim, which I don't know how accurate it is, but they claim that your hand grip strength is an indication of your overall body strength. There's some errors associated with that. We did a health fair at the legislature one time, and we went down there and measured all the congressmen and senators and stuff like that. We did their cholesterol, we did a step test, we did a bunch of stuff, a lung test on them and that kind of stuff. And they did awful on all those tests except for hand strength, grip strength. They had great grip strength. So,
shaking hands.
Yeah, they shake hands all day long, man. They got great grip strength, but everything else is falling apart because they don't take care of themselves. So strength is specific according to what? How you train, right? Yeah, and so it's specific. If I shake hands all day or take one of those balls and grip it all day real hard or whatever, I'm probably gonna get strong there, but I'm not gonna get strong anyplace else there. But it's a measure, and we use it in exercise science because it's been around and people use it as a measure of isometric strength. It's fun to play with or whatever. So give you some indication there. So we have isometric, and then we have isotonic. Isotonic means what? Same. Tonic means tone, same tone. That means that if I'm going to take a barbell or a dumbbell and it weighs 50 pounds, as long as I'm on earth and working against gravity, it weighs what? 50 pounds, right? Now, if I go to the moon, it weighs something else. But on earth, it weighs 50 pounds, okay? So here, if I take it, no matter what position I'm in, it weighs 50 pounds. So then, I can take the weight and I can move it. And then if I'm a football lineman, I can squats, because I'm going to have to use that in my position right there. If I'm a golfer, I can take a weight and sling it around and do that isotonically and move the weight around, right? And so free weights. And so free weights have an advantage is we can mimic sports-related movements with free weights, right? And then you get a good workout. You know, if you're going to do an arm curl, you're still working your core because you got to maintain your spinal angle or whatever in order to lift the weight, right? Not like a jellyfish. And so you got to do that to do that. So if we're going to measure your strength with a free weight, do isotonic, we put you maybe like a bench press, right? We lay you on the thing and you can see how much you can lift there. That'd be a measure of isotonic strength. Okay. Now we know that with free weights, you know, sometimes you have to have spotters or should have spotters, right? And you got to put the plates on and off there. And so then people came up with and criticized free weights. It came up with weight machines. And so the first big weight machine in the United States was developed by who?
It wasn't Nautilus, was it?
Not Nautilus. Nautilus came a little bit after Universal. Universal weight machines. We had a governor one time, Bob James from Opelika. He had a company called Diversified Products. You ever heard of it? They made free weights out of a plastic weight with concrete on the inside of it. You ever seen those? And so instead of the metal, they had plastic weights there. They finally went bankrupt, and some company bought them or whatever. But they made a lot of money at one time. We used to go to the dump in Opelika, where they would throw out all their seconds, the ones that weren't very good, and we'd get all their old weights, and then we'd bring them home, and then we'd have our own little weight room and stuff. So we'd get them from the dump. So you've got different types of free weight types of devices. Then you have machines, and Universal was the first one. If you ever seen a Universal machine, it had a different station, had like a little leg press here, and you go around the corner, you'd have maybe a lat pull down, then you go around the corner, then have another station, and so then had another station. So it had a lot of little stations, and you could do a pretty good workout just going around to those little different stations doing the machines there. Then Nautilus came along. I've told you all about this in exercise physiology. You remember my story?
I don't know all the details.
Okay. Nautilus was invented by a guy, you remember? His name is Arthur Jones. Remember me telling about Arthur? Okay. Must not have been a good story. Okay.
Did he have like a younger wife or something, much younger wife?
Oh yeah, Arthur, he came up with something called variable resistance. Okay, you need to know what variable resistance is, and that means if we have a machine and the resistance varies based upon the angle, you'll try to find the angle that's appropriate for that person lifting that weight. So if I'm going to do it like a pullover, okay, I'm weak right here, right? I'm really weak in this position. Here I'm what? I'm stronger. Here I'm even stronger. So if they put a cam in the machine, what a cam is it's a pulley, but it's not a round pulley, okay? And so it's sort of a pulley that's not completely round, and they can put like a cable on it, and they put a weight right here, and then they put like a bar or something to pull on here. So now when I get it started, it's not as hard, it's not as much resistance as it is when I get here, right? So here, this thing, this cam rotates this way, and I take it, and I pull over, and then I'm working the muscle hard as I can in all those different angles, right? So it's called variable resistance. It's a type of isotonic, but it's a variable resistance type of device there. So Arthur Jones was a unique person. He's really unique. And so he had millions of dollars. And so good businessman. And so at the American College of Sports Medicine meeting one time, it was just like a room like this, and they had a speaker up here at the podium, and he was criticizing Arthur Jones's Nautilus equipment. He says, well, the angle different because people with different arms, it works differently. It doesn't fit women as good, or men, or big, or tall, or whatever. So the angles don't match up with all these different variables or characteristics. So Arthur, he's like, you sitting right there. He gets up there and walks up to the guy and starts to punch him. This is at a scientific meeting, and so Arthur gets. And they have a little fight. And then, Arthur, nobody likes Arthur anymore after that. And so, but he's got lots of money. He could care less. And so Arthur wants a Miss Nautilus. Like on all the car magazines, they put like a girl in a bikini on the front of the thing to sell the magazine. And so Arthur has beauty contest in the state of Florida, bikini model beauty contest, And he's like 60 something, and he picks Miss Nautilus, who's 18, and she's like a bikini model, beautiful model or whatever. He buys her a jet, and so he's in his house in Florida. He has his own runway. He has his own jet. He buys her a jet, and she's on the Tonight Show, because she set the record in the woman to fly the jet the fastest from Europe to the United States. So she had a pretty good deal there, right? In terms of money-wise, dealing with Arthur was probably not that good, but money-wise, it was pretty good. So I don't know what happened. I'm sure he's dead by now, but I don't know what happened to her. And so I don't know if she's still around or what, but she's probably just enjoyed the money. Bought her island someplace or something. Then Arthur sold Nautilus to a company called Cybex that was out of Germany. And so you've probably seen some Cybex weight equipment and so forth. And so, and then they make a lot of medical equipment. They're in PT programs and that kind of stuff. So that's a little history on some of the weight machine stuff that's going on. Now the problem with the variable resistance is that you go in there, machines don't fit everybody. You got to adjust the machine, right? And then they said, well, if these people are smaller or smaller women or whatever, the machine doesn't fit. Then they started putting in Nautilus machines for women in the gym, and so then you had to buy 2 sets of equipment. This was not cheap weight equipment either, and so you know, it's one way we can train with machines. The disadvantage is what? Doesn't fit everybody, right? And angles aren't right. And so, you know, you hop in the machine and you got to get it all adjusted, and then you do your little workout or whatever, and the next person comes on, and then you get somebody in the wellness center, and they've got them a seat and they're on their cell phone, and you need that machine. And they're sitting there the whole time. I need that leg extension machine. So you have to wait for them to get off the stinking machine. And so they need to move on, right? Get off their stinking cell phone. Okay?
Would another disadvantage be, because like with free weights, you have to, I guess, engage like the entire core. A lot of these machines, you're not always doing that.
Yeah, a lot of machines, you don't need any core. You just, yeah.
What about the same one? You get on leg press, almost leg press, double what you can max out. What was that?
Yeah, they've tested machines, and it says, you know, if it says like some machines, it says you're like doing 60 pounds, it may not be 60 pounds. And you go to
like the leg press, you slide the plates on each side, and you know exactly, like the plate weighs 45 pounds, you put 10 of them on, you can't squat that.
yeah, if you put the plate on there, you know exactly what it is. The machines, the numbers on the machine are not exact in terms of what you're really lifting. And so like that leg press in the gym, I could do like the whole stack. And so I know I can't squat 400 pounds or whatever. And so, but on the machine, because of the angles and stuff, you just get in there and you do what? Just push, right? And so that's the disadvantage too, is they're not accurate in terms of if you're doing exercise testing, you have to be careful and always use the same machine from pre to post. Now, one problem is, you know, we showed you the norms with VO2. There's not good norms for strength. Most of the norms for strength are based upon that universal machine, not free weights. And so that's the disadvantage. So we don't have good norms on terms of, okay, how strong soccer girls are with bench press or leg press or whatever. Okay? We just don't have the data there because we haven't tested like, you know, 1,000 soccer players and so forth. We may have some data on specific teams, but in terms of overall, in terms of strength levels for them. So be wary, you know, the number you get on the machine is not always exactly the number of pounds that you're working against or pushing against or whatever. So be careful with that. So we have isometric, isotonic, the form of that is what? Variable resistance. And what else do we have that PTs use? What's the big machine they have in the PT clinic that costs thousands and thousands of dollars? What is it? Isokinetic? So what brand do y'all have? Okay. But isokinetics is another way to train or measure or whatever. It has a lever, and that lever will only move at a certain speed. So the advantage there is if we're going to do a leg extension and that lever only moves at a certain speed, we can measure a force. So we can measure force at all angles. And so here we're looking at, maybe strength, this is force, or this angle. Okay, and so here at 90 degrees, you may be real, a lot of force, 90 degrees, strength is high, and then if we go to like 180 degrees, it may be that too strong. So then we measure the other leg, and they'd be like, ooh, completely different. And so with isokinetics, we can push as hard as we can at every single angle, right? Because it's only going to let the lever go at a certain what? Speed. And we're measuring strength the whole time. Okay, they're putting this much force out here, they're putting this much force out here, putting this much force out here. And so isokinetically, we're able to measure force at every single angle. And that's an advantage for the PT or OT, because then they can see what? How strong you are in every different what? Position, right? Then, if you're weak at a certain position, they're able to do what? Work on that one weak spot, right? And try to get you recovered and try to get you stronger at that one particular angle there. The disadvantage is it's extremely expensive. Really, maybe 30,000, 40,000 maybe or more. And so we had a hand-me-down one that we sort of put together ourselves, but we got rid of it. It just wasn't any good. But PTs use that, and they use it to compare strength. You got to get the person to lay them down on the table or whatever you do. You got them positioned right. One problem is there's a big learning effect with strength, and so you may get stronger because you learn how to work the machine or push against the machine, and it may not be exactly the gains in strength that you measure. It may be the way to operate or manipulate the machine there. So that's another type of strength. So we have, what are our different ways that we can measure strength? Isometric, isotonic, variable resistance, which is form isotonic, and then we have what? Isokinetic, right? You ever tried to let the air out of an air mattress or beach ball? And so you push and push and push, and so how fast does the air go out? Depends on how big the hole is, right? And so at every single angle, you're still pushing very, very hard, right? And so that's another type of isokinetic type of device there. You ever heard of a thing called curves for women? It's like a weight gym for women, and it's they call it curves, and they use shock absorber machines. And so you push against the shock absorber, and then if you look at a shock absorber, you have a shock absorber here, you have a piston here, you push down on this piston, and it has a little hole, and then no matter how hard you push, this thing moves at a certain speed, and the air goes out here, get into the gym with all the free weights and people, you know, flexing and all that kind of stuff. So they came up with curves for women, and all their machines were based upon air pressure and shock absorbers and stuff like that. I think they still have those at gym someplace, but I think they had one on the Atlanta Highway. But that's another way that you could train against the machine. So why don't we call it weightlifting anymore? What do we call it? Resistance training, right? So the term is not weight training, it's resistance training. Because we may be working against what? Something that's not a weight, right? It could be air pressure, or it could be a spring, or it could be a rubber band, it could be anything that we push against, right? And so, you know, sometimes we work against gravity, sometimes we work against air pressure, or whatever. Okay, so then, if we're going to look at strength, we measure strength, we measure different angles and so forth, and we look at specific muscles, right? So, if I'm going to lift a weight, what muscle raises the weight? Bicep, right? What muscle lowers the weight? Tricep? What muscle lowered that weight?
Gravity.
Gravity. So gravity lowered the weight. And so what allowed gravity to lower the weight? I let go, right? I didn't use any muscle, right? And so whenever we train, we use one muscle to what? Raise the weight. Okay, and then we use that same muscle to do what?
Control the weight.
To keep gravity from taking it to the ground, right? So that's why we do concentric and we do what?
Eccentric.
Eccentric, right? You can get stronger concentrically and you can get stronger what? Eccentrically. Now if I wanted to throw the weight at you, I'd use the tricep, right? And so if we're doing pull-ups, if you got a woman that needs to be, I've done this before, in the years past, to be on a state trooper, they had to do like a pull-up or two. Lady couldn't do a pull-up, wanted to be a state trooper. So we put her up on the bar and let her do what? Hang and let her do what?
Let herself down.
Let herself down. And work eccentrically until eventually she could do a pull-up, right? So you can train people eccentrically because you can put a lot more weight or force on them eccentrically than you can concentrically, right? We could put, you know, if you could bench press 200 pounds, we could put 300 pounds on the bar and let you lower it, right? And you'd get stronger what? Eccentrically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The problem with eccentric, what's the problem with eccentric? Huh? Yeah, you need spotters. It causes muscle damage. Okay? And so it causes muscle damage. And so muscle damage is tearing or stretching the muscle fiber, and that causes the damage to the muscle. We talked about this in exercise fields, right? And so when you lower the weight, remember the muscle fiber is surrounded by connective tissue. So here, take muscle. Here, say this is muscle. And around outside of it, here you got tendons. And here you've got connective tissue that keeps it all that line there. So you've got the connective tissue that keeps the muscle together, right? When we lower the weight or whatever, stretch the weight, pull against it, it tears or stretches the connective tissue. And then it causes damage to the muscle fiber. There's a chemical called creatine kinase, CK. Then that chemical leaks out into the blood, if I took you in the weight room and they said, okay, you hadn't done squats for a while, I'm gonna put a heavy weight on you, and then we're gonna do about 5 sets of 10 squats. Do our squats. The next day, you're what? You're like, oh, I can't walk up steps. Okay. And so why? Because you got muscle damage, right? You got muscle damage from the workout. And so we tore the muscle down. The muscle fibers are torn up, messed up, and damage is leaking out, or breakdown of the muscles, leaking out into the blood. You create kinase levels, or what? Way up. You got muscle damage, and then you're in trouble, right? We've had personal trainers that have caused so much muscle damage to a person that they've got compartment syndrome. You ever see compartment syndrome in a PT clinic? What compartment syndrome is, the muscle swells up with fluid, and they have to come in, they have to surgically cut the muscle open to relieve the fluid in the muscle in order to get rid of all that fluid and damage within the muscle. You ever heard of a magazine called Muscle and Fiction? Muscle and Fitness? There's a magazine called Muscle and Fitness. I don't know if it's still on the market or whatever. We call it Muscle and Fiction, but the scientists do, because they had this workout, and one of his personal trainers came in and put this poor girl on this workout, and she did like 100 arm curls. She had so much damage. CrossFit does this sometimes. It had so much damage in the muscle that she went to Maxwell, and they said this is the most muscle damage they've ever seen on one human being in their whole life. They had to cut her muscle open in order for her to heal up there.